Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And in this week's episode, I'm talking with Teresa, who used to eat a ton of sugar growing up. And things were just fine for her until, well, they weren't anymore. And when it was suggested to her to cut all forms of sugar, she thought that was crazy, extreme even. And between you and me, I totally get that because that's exactly how I felt when the idea was first suggested to me. So how did Teresa's outlook about sugar and food change? That's what you'll find out in this week's episode. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources about how to get rid of cravings, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. All right, let's get to our chat with Teresa. All right, so today I'm talking with Teresa from BC, Canada, British Columbia. And Teresa, lovely to see you. And can you tell us a bit about your background with food and sugar, especially?
Yeah, I am you're not going to get a doctor probably say this, but I am a self-proclaimed sugar addict. I know that my entire life it's been about sugar. The processed foods were new when I was a kid in the 70s, 80s, and the parents were all like feeding, processed foods, which are full of sugar. And, and then there was all the pop and ice cream and when I was 6, I used to steal my mom's change out of her wallet, walk to the store, which was like I had to walk through an alley and 2 major roads, so I could go to the store and buy candy. And I was always in trouble for it. And so it was like a whole lifelong thing of eating sweets. And it got to like a point where I was eating, like my breakfast was sugary breakfast cereals. And I have a thing where I don't eat. I forget to eat or I don't eat. I just keep putting it off. I'm busy, that kind of thing. Usually it's something I'm consciously working on to try and, get better. But so I was eating sugary cereal for like a couple of meals a day. And that was all I was getting for food.
Yeah.
And I was, everybody in my first office job, everybody knew if they came to my desk, the top drawer was full of candy. It was like a convenience store in there. So, and I was drinking 2 to 4 liters of Coke a day, no water, no juice, like nothing else, just Coke or root beer. Those were the 2.
Okay. Oh my goodness. And this was in British Columbia in Canada, right? That's where you grew up?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And how did that affect you, if at all?
Well, it totally affected me. I started having problems where my eye was super dry, and it was like constantly watering, and it hurt because it was so dry. And I was losing my hair, and I was losing my eyelashes, and my left leg got so swollen that I couldn't wear a shoe. I ended up wearing like a slipper a lot. And I can't remember. I'm pretty sure there was like a few other things, but my health was deteriorating and my doctor couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And she was just like, well, I guess this is, age. I'm like 32. This isn't age.
Good grief. And I'm wondering, I'm curious to know, although I suspect I already know the answer. Did anyone, any doctor at any point ever ask you, what are you eating?
I think it had come up with almost every doctor, not into any kind of like delving deep into it, but every single doctor I've ever had, and on a regular basis, my blood sugar levels are always checked because everybody knew how much sugar I was eating. But unfortunately, I don't find those blood tests to be overly like you for anything to show up on there, your body's already got to be in shutdown mode kind of thing. Like it's got to be affected. So they really didn't take my numbers were always fine. My body kept adapting and saying, I'm good, everybody, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody delved deeper into it. And because I wasn't diabetic yet, so
Mm-hmm.
they didn't think anything of it. Um, it wasn't until like I had all those things happen and my doctor was like, well, that's it. That's, this is what you're going to be like for life. And I was like, I don't think so. I'm way too young for that. And a coworker recommended her naturopath. And he was an MD and an ND. So he had like a lot of knowledge and experience. And our very first visit, I think he asked me like 2 or 3 questions and he's like, yeah, it's your liver. And he's like, and then he was like, how much, I happened to have a Starbucks in there. I was drinking a hot chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, that coffee's bad. And he's freaking out. I'm like, oh, it's hot chocolate. And he's like, oh, it's just as bad. And he's freaking out. I'm like, I think we're being a little dramatic here, right? Like, let's calm down. And he cut me off sugar cold turkey, and that was probably I cried. I was And it was an hour drive from his office back to my work, and I cried the whole way because I was like, you can't take that away from me. You My whole life I drank pop. Like that was my fluid of choice. And I was like, what am I gonna do? I can't live without it. And like I said, I cried. I didn't know what to do with my diet. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know what to supplement with. And
But
it
wait, but
was
wait. I
mhm.
mean, he just said what? Just stop sugar and didn't even like give you alternatives or anything?
No, I had to stop. Like he put me on this extraordinarily restrictive diet. He cut out dairy, he cut out gluten, he cut out all sweeteners, he cut out bananas because of the sugar content. He cut out dried fruits because sulfates and the sugar content. And he cut out so much stuff.
And wait,
Um,
wait, wait.
it
I'm
was like,
stopping.
oh.
I've got to stop you again. And this is what is considered to be extraordinarily restrictive. And all I'm hearing is he cut out sugar, this type of sugar, that type of sugar. And it's, from the other side, from me now,
Yeah,
people listening, that's not extremely restrictive. That's just like the basis of what should be.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
I
But from
totally
where
get
I
that
was,
at the time for you, it was
yes,
like, what?
it was extreme. I couldn't understand why somebody would go to such extreme levels. To me, that was just crazy talk. It's what are you thinking? How am I supposed to live? What will I eat? Oh, yeah, I think he cut out rice too. So I was left with potatoes for starchy
Oh,
food.
yeah,
And
that's
um,
bad.
yeah, but I guess it came down to how the body how the sugar breaks down, like if it's fast or slow. And I guess he left me potatoes. So um but it was the kick I needed to start changing my diet.
Yeah.
It didn't last. It didn't because as you just said, you heard me say he cut out things. He did this to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did not make those choices on my own. So therefore it lasted quite a few years. I shouldn't say it didn't last, but it lasted, I think, I want to say like 8 years.
Well, that's
And
lots. Wow.
yeah, but when he passed away suddenly, and maybe 7, 6, anyway, he passed away suddenly, and I all of a sudden did not have that person holding me accountable,
Mm-hmm.
who was telling me I had to do this for my health. And I was going through a lot at the time, like a huge, like it was he passed away at the end of like an 18-month span of time that I had like a lot of trauma.
Okay.
And so my go-to was, I have to console myself, or I have to, you know, self-medicate. Like it's like a self-medicate sort of thing, and you're avoiding, and so your muscle memory goes back to, I'm going to eat sugar because it makes me happy, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so I didn't have I didn't spend enough time, because I was so, he's making me do this. I didn't make the choices to change my diet for myself. And so it's not sustainable, because I was
Mm-hmm.
doing it for him, basically, right? I can't do this because he'll say something to me if he catches me. And don't get me wrong, there were times I binged, because the problem with cold turkey and doing it for somebody else is you're not making that decision. And I would do stuff like make a batch of icing and sit and eat it. And, so that's not good. Would
Yeah.
have been
Yes,
better to have a banana.
because it wasn't coming from you. Is
Exactly.
that why?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I learned for myself, is if it's not coming from me, it's not sustainable, and it's not going to continue. And because you have to be able to make those decisions in everyday life based on what's for you. If you're doing it for somebody else,
Yeah.
you don't, at a point, you don't care, because you're like, oh, well, it's just for them, kind of thing.
Yes, yes. And although I have to say, how many people do we know who wake up one morning, leap out of bed and say, I know, I think today I'll cut out all forms of sugar and starch.
Yeah, nobody does, because that's crazy talk.
Crazy talk. I mean, I'm the sugar-free girl, and even I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So how do we go from doing it for someone else and needing that kick, which most of us do, and that kick usually comes from someone else, to doing
Mhm.
it for yourself?
That 18 months of trauma. That put my health in a position, because it was part of the trauma was 3 car accidents. So physically, mentally, emotionally, like I had a lot hit me in that 18 months.
Mm.
So I had a lot of healing to do. And so it was part of the healing process, but also it was the little things like the, uh, the car accident. I've had a lot of concussions in my life. So each car accident gave me, again, another concussion.
Okay.
And they were with migraines and stuff. And I guess I am susceptible to this. It caused me to gain weight, which therefore caused me the pressure in my head to increase and squish on my optical nerves.
Okay.
So it came to, you're going to lose your vision, kind of thing. And um, getting over concussions is, you cut out a lot of like caffeine, sugar, alcohol, like things that are inflammatory, because your body's freaking out, and your brain controls everything. So if you don't take care of your brain, have fun,
Mhm.
you know. And it was a whole process of just additional health problems. And I started, due to all the things I was working on, I ended up getting a hypnotherapy session, and found out that my sugar had a bond to my bond with my dad was food based, kind of thing. Because when I was little, he would take me for breakfast,
Oh,
and we'd share ice cream together and stuff like that. So it became a bond for us. And the 18 months of trauma started with my dad passing away. So I think it added to it, of me falling off that little, what's that? hypothetical train, kind of thing of,
Yeah.
and so I started, dealing with that and recognizing that connection that I had to the sugar. And then I started recognizing when I was getting cravings and how the cravings were showing up and when, and what was my reaction. And, it always turned out that stress, overwhelm, fear, like all these high emotions was when I would grab some sugar. And it was always done without thinking. Like, if you can have one or two pieces of candy or something, that's not a big deal. It's
Hmm.
when you sit down with a family-sized bag of candy and you're like doing something and then you're like, oh, this bag is empty, and you don't even really remember that you ate a whole bag.
Yeah, I think we've all been
That's the
there. Yeah.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like you zone out, like you're in
yes,
a parallel universe and suddenly the box or the bag is empty.
yeah. So it was all of that. So I did all that, and then the point with the pressure in my head, it got to a point where it was like, we're gonna have to do surgery if we can't get this down.
Wow.
And so I hired a health coach, and we worked on that whole mindset of the food choices and adding the healthy food. And why am I eating? Like when you choose to eat, why are you eating that?
Hmm.
And it came to, is this going to help me? Like, is this going to help me get better? Is this going to be allow me to live to, because I swear I'm going to live to 107, and I'm going to be a very active 107
Smashing.
and do everything for myself and still travel and everything. And so it was like, well, if you want that, is this going to get you there? And it was like, oh, wow. Having that flip of mindset, it wasn't, now I wasn't doing it for the accountability of somebody else. I
Hmm.
was doing it because I want to live my life. I want to be an active, you know, participant in life. I want to do things and see things. And it, if my health isn't there, I can't.
Yep.
And so it became, that was the choice. Is this what I want? Is this the
Yeah.
future I'm looking for?
That is very powerful. And sometimes it takes that type of trauma, to shake us up,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
so that we do it for ourselves. Because as you say, with all the best intentions in the world,
Yeah.
if it doesn't come from you, it's not intrinsic, then it's not going to be sustainable.
No, it's not. And it's you almost you get a high, because when you first do it and you're doing it for somebody else you don't even know, but you're doing it. And it's such a change. You think this is amazing. This is great. And then you start, like, your body starts changing. Like, I lost weight and it was like, this is amazing, and it wasn't until, I mean, for me, I gained the weight back. And so it wasn't sustainable, even though I had made that choice. But at the beginning, you don't recognize that it's not sustainable because all these good things are happening.
Yeah.
And you don't recognize until, and then once you fall off the, proverbial train, you then you start going into that, oh, I guess I can't do it. Oh, I'm supposed to be this way. Oh, this is all I can do. Then the negative thoughts come in. And you don't even recognize that that's what's happening because you're in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
And, so that's the thing is, that's why most of us need some big giant whack upside the head.
Yes, and sometimes what we think is a big giant whack upside the head is just a gentle nudge, and then
Yes,
we really need like
exactly.
a big kick up the bum.
Exactly.
I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
Well, like you said, I did it, the cutting out sugar. I'm saying drastic, but was it really drastic? Not really, and it's just where you're at, right? The relative to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how brave of you to actually recognize that. Because it's very often easy for us to say, well, it's the thing that isn't sustainable, right? It's
Hmm.
living sugar-free that isn't sustainable. But actually, what's not sustainable is doing it without your big why, as I call it.
Yes. And thank you for saying that. I mean, we all love external validation, so thank you for that. I don't know if I would have done it without all that stuff happening. But then that's I believe in always looking for the positive of things, because crappy things always happen. So if you can find the positive, it makes it a little bit, easier to handle.
100% agree. And I often say, real life happens whether or not you eat sugar.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did this air quote extreme elimination diet that I just call eating food.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way to put that in perspective for me. Thanks.
Yeah, you know.
Well, I extreme. No, you did. You ate food. Love that.
And so, but it is socially perceived as extreme.
It is.
And so, can you tell us a bit about what the social reactions were when you did this, again, air quote, extreme thing?
It was not easy, actually. If I didn't have that nice little stubborn streak people bug me about, I would not have continued it, because the amount of pressure and mocking and jokes and it was insane. Everybody had a comment to make. No matter what, everybody had a comment to make. Oh, is that your healthy food? Oh, is that, why don't you just have a piece of cake? Eat cake. And they'd shove it in your face. And
Yep.
it's like, are you kidding? Yeah, why are you trying to shove? It was literally inches away from my nose, kind of thing, right? Would you do that? And so they've always got comments to make. And even when it was a lot. You just think about it, and it's like every friend event, every family event, every work event. The coworkers were probably the worst, because your friends and family at least know you a little, right? So they're not quite as harsh. The coworkers were a lot harsher. Also, my friends and family had, how many years ago I went vegetarian, so they were used to me being slightly different with my food choices.
Okay.
But everybody still has comments, right? And then, but there was also some support in there. I remember one of my birthdays, everybody, we went out for dinner, and nobody ordered anything off the menu. We had the cake that I brought, which I had made myself. And I had used I don't know if anybody knows this, agave. I know it's a fructose, but it's also how the body breaks it up and stuff. So at the time, that's what I was using. And the cake then would had a very distinctive flavor to it, because agave is a distinctive flavor. And they all took some and ate it and thanked me. And they were like, well, it's not quite my thing, but thank you for the cake. So they were supportive. I did have some support, but it was a lot of pressure. More on a day-to-day basis is where the pressure came from. And even just something like, you go in and you ask for no sweetener. Like, do you have something like this with no sweetener? And they're like, oh, we have this. I'm like, well, that actually has a sweetener in it. It just has, not, it doesn't say sugar, but there were 4 other sweeteners listed, kind of thing. And then you're difficult. And, can't you just take this? Or can't you just do this? Or so many things, so many things. It was, I'm like trying to think of specific situations, but it's all coming down to every situation I found myself in, there was some comment made about my choices. and sugar.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Even even when I did the health coach and made the changes to my lifestyle, my choices, I was eating with a friend and she's like, "Oh, are you doing this extreme eating thing again?" And I was like, I said, "I'm sitting here eating a piece of pizza with you. So I'm pretty sure this isn't referred to as extreme. But if you mean, am I caring about what I eat so that my future health is impacted? Then yes, yes, I am."
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
it's just
So what are you doing caring about yourself and your health and like what's wrong
yeah.
with you?
Well, exactly, exactly. And I'm learning that I, I just told you all the process and the trauma and all the healing I had to do. So I do put my health as a top priority. And it's amazing. I'm recognizing that not many people do. They think they do, but their choices aren't based on what's best for their health.
Agree.
Um, they're really putting themselves through a lot that's unnecessary.
Yes, I was the same. I was the same. I
Mm,
thought I
me
was
too.
really good to myself and looking after my health. But I think it's that paradigm that needs to shift, that reframe of, you were talking about what comes from us and what comes from the outside. And I always followed what I was told was healthy
Mm,
without ever
yes.
thinking about, wait a minute, maybe I can be in charge of what's healthy for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that we tend to follow along with what's going on in society. Like what's the trend. And in the 90s and 2000, actually I think even still people go on about, oh, I got to have fat free. Fat free is full of sugars. There's tons of sweeteners in fat free. And it turns out when I started going to a dietitian and the health coach who was a nutritionist, they were like, "You're not eating any fats." And I'm like, "Oh, well, of course, I felt guilty for saying what I was eating. And it turns out I was not eating any healthy fat. They're like, "You got to put healthy fat in. This is not good for your body. Your body needs all this stuff to be able to work and function." And I was like, "What? Like, what is this?"
Yeah.
And it was kind of shocking to me because the trend is always to not eat it.
Yes, it's
And
quite mind-blowing after 50, 60 years of being told that fat is bad, mind-blowing to realize, wait, human biology
yeah,
dictates certain types of unprocessed fats are just fine.
yes, exactly. Or you eat some avocado and someone's like, "Should you be eating that? It's very high in fat." Yes, I should be eating this. This is really good fat.
It's funny because what you were saying about social pressure and having the personality that you have, I think we're quite similar of sort of being a little bit rebellious.
A little.
British understatement there.
Yes.
Where I sometimes have fun saying yes, as I put butter into my soup, or I'm not keto or anything, but I'm not scared of butter or avocado
Oh,
or coconut oil, whatever.
yeah.
And I say to people, yes, I'm trying to have enough fat so that I can keep my figure.
Mm. That's a good one. I love that.
And then they're like, what? And
Yeah.
it's not about what just how you look or your weight and stuff, but it's a nice little dig if you feel like doing that because it's not towards the individual, the dig, it's towards that message that we've had from the diet culture, right, for the last
Hmm.
60 years or so that fat is bad, and yet collectively we're all fatter and sicker.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's all the I have to say the nutritionist, the diet coach I worked with, she was all about eating fresh foods. Eat your veg because I'm a vegetarian, so it was all about load up on veggies and eat quinoa and oh, and that's the other thing I've never done is eat protein, and so it's eat lots of protein. And um, the dietitian was telling me to eat a little bit more processed foods. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to eat that. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because there's a lot of sugar in there's sweeteners in that. So, like I make these choices now where my food does not have sugar in it. Because just most people don't realize if you eat a salad dressing from the store, it's got sweeteners in it, and
Yeah.
sometimes more than one.
Yep.
And so I will eat just oil and vinegar and things like that, so I don't have any added sugar in that way. So that way I can, oh, I'm out and about, I'm going to go have a hot chocolate, or I'm going to go, oh, that cupcake looks really good. Like, I'm making a choice that the sugar I eat is the sugar I see. So
Mm.
it's not the hidden sugars, because the hidden sugars is what gets you, and you don't even recognize that you're eating that, right?
Totally, totally. And a good yardstick is really the level of processing of a
Mm.
product. I won't even call it food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the lower the processing, the more likely it is to be food. And that comes
Yes.
back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's not extreme. It's
No,
just
it's
eating
food.
food.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really funny how our society is like, eating fresh food is the extreme. And, you know, um, eating all the junk food, as I like to call it, because if you go to the grocery store, what's the cheaper thing? The vegetables or a package of, I don't know, for example, noodles and sauce, right?
True.
So it's what people end up choosing because it's financially more viable,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel more full after eating the noodles with some sauce, because there's a lot of stuff in there, and than you do from eating a plate of vegetables, right? Which I found out I kept getting hungry when I would eat
Okay.
vegetables and stuff and eat the fresh foods. I was like, 10 minutes later, half hour later, I'm so hungry. This stuff's not good for me. I can't eat like this. This isn't how. And it turns out it's because my body, it took I've worked with many people about this and nobody could figure it out. And the nutritionalist and I finally figured out it was my body's way of saying, I really need all these nutrients you're finally feeding me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And so now, do you consider yourself, in air quotes, sugar free?
No, I don't, because as I said, I will go get a hot chocolate. I will get a cookie or something like that. But I don't eat sugar in every meal. I don't eat sugar every day. I, a couple times a week I'll have sugar. And like I said, I made that choice to take it out of my foods. So now as I said, the sugar I eat is the sugar I see. There's no hidden sugars. Um, there are, don't get me wrong, there's I like to call them the healthy toaster pastry thing, like Pop Tart
Mhm.
things. It's a different brand, and it doesn't have as much sugar, and it doesn't have icing, and it doesn't have the fake filling, but it still has sugar. I still have that for those days where I don't have anything pre-ready for me. I'm in a rush, and I need to eat, because again, this is part of my problem, is I don't eat enough.
Yeah.
So I have to remind myself to eat. So I do have those, but again, I went with something that was a lot less and a totally alternative version, so that, I could feel like I was eating a little something, and I am still getting the sugar. But again, that's the choice I'm making, to eat that as my sugar that
Yeah.
day, kind of thing, right? So,
And you're doing it yourself. It's your choice, which
mhm.
I 100% stand behind. And it's a lot of people think that the guests on the Life After Sugar podcast are all 100% sugar free 100% of the time. And I'm so happy that you're not.
Yes.
And
For
that,
me, it's hard.
yeah, and 100%, it's like, even I'm not 100% sugar free 100% of the time. Because why would we even aim for 100% or so-called perfection? Like,
There's no such thing as perfection.
exactly. Why even aim for something that doesn't exist?
Hmm. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's still life. It's you still have to enjoy it. And if you're at a birthday party and everybody's like, "Oh, the cake." I mean, I was that person that didn't eat and didn't join in. And it felt, you do feel a little, I guess is the word, social anxiety, because you're excluded almost. You're not part of it. and you feel like you do feel like you're being difficult when you don't eat, right? But if you're making that choice that you're like, you know, like I said, I've made choices in the other parts of my life. So when it comes to sugar, I'll be like, sure, give me a small piece, kind of thing. But I'm also aware. I mean, I've heard people say stuff like, oh, I don't eat sugar. Oh, ice cream. Sure, I'll have a scoop. And I'm like, um, are you not aware that you're eating sugar? Or are you just wanting me to believe that you don't eat sugar,
Yes,
And that's the
yes, I've
thing,
had
because if you aren't,
lots of people say to me, I don't actually eat very much sugar. And then we dig a little deeper and find out that it's not only a lot, but it's at every meal and at every snack. But no,
exactly,
we're not aware because we're not required to be aware unless we've had that kick up the
yes,
bum.
exactly. Or several in my case. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And so I'm happy that, you agreed to come on this podcast because I really want to send that message that there is no such thing as perfection.
Yeah,
Whether or not it's about being sugar-free, and that there's all shades of grey of life after sugar.
there
We
is.
don't all
Yeah.
have to be the same. We don't all have to be like Netta, whatever that means.
Yeah, I am very much against everybody feeling the need to be the same. We're all different.
Yeah,
And so our journey is going to be different. And how we um, live with sugar is also going to be different. I mean, I get there's people who can have zero and maybe that's because it's a health thing. Maybe that's I know there's people out there that don't like sweets. They like savory. I'm the opposite, so everybody is very different. And thank you for having me on, because I agree. I think it's really good when we hear different sides of everything, right? And understand that we don't have to fit into some box that we've created in our head that we need to be.
yeah.
You can find your way, what works for you.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for being such an inspiration for everybody listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Wonderful talking to you. Thank you.
You too. Thank you for having me on today.
What a great chat with Teresa. And I really love how she reframes how she sees cutting sugar, because she herself used to believe that it was extreme to cut out, well, basically, products that are not actually food. And that is a very common point of view, I found. In fact, I used to believe the exact same thing. Whereas really, what's extreme may be that we believe that all these highly processed food-like products are not only everywhere, but a normal part of our everyday diet, especially in North America. So if, like Teresa, you're also struggling with how you see food, as well as some negative health consequences, then there are two ways that we can work together. First, in the After Sugar Club, which is designed to give you support and accountability through our live check-in calls at a more affordable price. The After Sugar Club is always open for you. Check out the After Sugar Club private membership when you go to aftersugarclub.com. Click on After Sugar Club in the top menu. And for more step-by-step guidance and customized support to help you get rid of cravings so that you can slim down and finally feel in control around food, there's my 90-day program, Freedom from Cravings Formula, which opens a few times a year. To get more info about the program and when it next opens, go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the big green button to schedule a clarity call with me so that we can talk together to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula program is a good fit for you. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.